What's going on, guys? Justin Fuller here. Today I'm outside of the 2022 Honda Civic Si. If you were looking for extra horsepower, awesome interior, a Bose sound system, and a 9-inch touchscreen to go in a car that screams down the road, this might be for you. So let's hop on in, check it out. All right, guys, so let's talk about what's underneath the hood of this Honda Civic Si. Right, so I'm gonna pull you on in here. You're looking at a 1.5 liter turboed engine that is putting out 200 horsepower. Now, if you were looking at the standard Civic, the EX or above, you would be looking at 180 horsepower. So they're tweaking out an extra 20 horsepower. And then if you were looking at that 2-liter engine, it'd be 158. So understand where this vehicle lives. The only thing above this that would get you more horsepower in the Civic would be your Type R, which is gonna be an extra 10 grand, but it does get you 105 extra horsepower. So underneath here, you've got, of course, access to your battery terminal. So if you wanna hook up an amp, a sub, extra lights, anything like that, they've made this very accessible. Your fuse box is running right here, so it's sitting on top. Air box is right here. And then my fluid entries are all gonna be easy to access. And then I've got some extra space running back behind here in case I wanna add anything in or I need to get back there. All right, guys, so before we leave the front end, of course, I want to throw you up a horsepower comparison so you can understand how this vehicle stacks up to some of the other makes and models out there in the market. So I'm going to throw that up on the screen so you can kind of see and understand where does this car live in that market, right? How does it compete against some of those other sport-based models out there? So after you're taking a look at that, I do want to remind you that in comparison to all the Civics, right? When you're looking at your 2 liters, which is gonna be like your LX, your base models, you're looking at 158 horsepower. When you move up into the turboed engines, right? You're looking at 180 horsepower. Then when you're looking at this vehicle, you're looking at 200 horsepower. And then above this, if you wanna spend that extra 10 grand and get that extra 105, 106, you got 306 in that Civic Type R. So in the Honda family, if you're looking at Civics, that's how this progresses. All right, guys, so this next topic is one, pretty obvious, and two, kind of important, especially with gas prices today. So I want to talk to you about gas mileage in this specific car and how it stacks up to what's out there in the market, and then of course the other Civics that live kind of in this family, right? So this car gets 27 in the city and 37 on the highway. Now, if you're looking at the other Civics, just to start you somewhere, 31 in the city and 40 is what your like base model will get, right? So if you're looking at that 2-liter aspirated engine. Now, if you move into that turboed engine, you're looking at 33 in the city and 40, I want to say 2 on the highway, right? So you're getting a little bit better gas mileage. And if you go up to that very top touring model, carries a little bit more weight, it's going to drop down a little bit. So understand that when you're looking at this vehicle, you're losing about 5 miles per gallon off of each side, the city and on the highway. So understand that, right? Now that you understand kind of where it lives in the Civic family and you've taken a look at that, I want to throw up that comparison so you can see how this car stacks up to other vehicles out there in the market. So take a look at that, and then from there, we'll head on out. All right, guys, so before we head into a walk around, I want to walk you through a couple trim changes, right? So that you understand, this kind of lives in its own category, but I want you to understand in the family of Hondas kind of where this lives. So, you know, when you're looking at the Civics, there's, you know, the LX, the Sport, the EX, you know, your touring, and then you kind of stop there. And then from there, the next price point that you would jump up to would be this specific vehicle, right? The SI. And then above that would be your Type R. So what I want to do is compare this vehicle to if I drop down to like a touring model, right? I said, hey, I want all the bells and whistles, and I'm going to give up that 20 horsepower, kind of understanding there versus if I want to go up to that Type R. So what I want to throw up on the screen is, hey, first off, hey, if I'm looking at the SI and I drop down to that Civic Touring, you know, how do things change? What does my price point change? And of course, what items do I gain or lose? So I want to throw that up on the screen so you can understand kind of what would that change look like if I wanted to go, we'll call it down to the touring model, right? So after you've taken a look at that, then I want to do the opposite, right? I want to talk to you about, hey, if I wanted to go from the SI and I wanted to jump up to that Type R, one, how much extra money is it going to cost me? And two, what extras is it going to get me? You know, how does this change things for me, right? Because one, let's talk, you know, it's going to be a price increase. I want to say it's about 10 grand because they're like 38 and change. You are going to get 106 extra horsepower. And it does come in a hatchback form, right? So you're looking at body kits and spoilers and all kinds of different stuff aesthetically. But I just want you to understand that, hey, if I'm looking in this world and kind of considering this as from a price point standpoint, if I drop down, if I go up, what am I looking at? So now that we've taken a look at both of those, let's do a walk around on the outside of this car. So as we walk around the car, of course, one of the first things I'll point out is these 18-inch wheels wrapped by these Summer Performance tires. So a nice look, right? You've got a good look in here. I would have loved if they painted this, maybe did it red just to kind of match the overall theme of the SI, but they didn't. But it's a good looking wheel and tire, especially if you armor all it up. So as you wrap around, of course, you do have the breakaway mirrors, right? So easy enough to control there. As we hit up here, it is smart key entry, so I can unlock the door by touching it, and the 3 ridges right here will allow me to lock the doors. I will point out that the car doesn't come tinted from the manufacturer, so you are gonna wanna tint this car probably yourself. Most of the people you see who get these are typically gonna tint them. Up top on the car, they do have a sunroof in it, so just be aware of that. It is available to you. You've got the shark fin as far as you're accessing like an antenna. As we wrap around the back, of course, in typical fashion, it is badged SI in the red. And then, of course, the typical back, you've got the LED brake lights, you've got your badging, and then, of course, marked Civic. And then you do have a deck lid spoiler. So as we continue, I'll point down low. You do have the dual-tipped exhaust, so you can see what you got running there. As we come around the other side, got my gas on the left side. Of course, as we move down, I'll point out safety-wise, you do have 2 front, 2 side, and 2 full curtain airbags. So 6 airbags in this vehicle. Related to safety, some other things you have is ACE body structure. If you're not familiar with that, it does have different crinkle zones. So if in the event that you do get into an accident, it's designed to push everything out and around. The engine is designed to drop down and push under so that nothing comes into the cabin and hurts anyone. Now, this car does have Honda sensing. If you're not familiar with Honda sensing, I just want to walk you through a couple of the features. One of the things I'll point out is this trapezoid cutout that you'll see right here where a camera lives. You have that, and then down inside of your grille over here, you are going to have a setup to give you access to a radar. Now, these 2 items are going to be used for a couple different features. One, I've got a forward collision system, so if it's looking like I'm going to rear in another car, it'll give me an audible alert flash in the dash and then actually apply the brakes to help prevent the accident, right? It's going to use that same setup when you're using adaptive cruise control. So if I set my cruise, it'll adjust if I'm coming up on somebody, slow my car down so that I don't run into them, right? And that way, when I get out around them, it'll take my speed back up to whatever I've set. So those 2 kind of work, congruently together. Now, the other thing it's got is a road departure warning system and a correction feature, right? So if I'm starting to drive off the shoulder of the road, it'll give me an audible alert and shake the wheel. Now, I also have a lane keep assist system, which means if I'm driving down the road and I'm centered in a lane, it'll pick up those lines using that camera. And then if I start to drift to the left or the right, it'll actually correct for me and keep me centered. So just kind of nice in case you get distracted or anything like that. You do, of course, have the badging up front for the SI. I've got that honeycomb grille. It always looks so cool when it's clean, but it's incredibly hard to keep clean. So always my big complaint about that. And then you have your LED daytime running lights and your headlights. As we come up across the front end, 2 standard windshield wipers and everything else that you would expect. All right, guys, so before we head inside the car, I wanted to talk to you about trunk space, right? So you are looking at 14.7 cubic feet of trunk space inside of this vehicle. Now, this customer has opted to add in the trunk tray right here. And then underneath this trunk tray is where I'll show you your tire repair kit lives, right? So they have removed the spare out of this car and just basically gone with fix a flat and a tire compressor. So be aware of that. You do have some extra storage. I've seen guys pull this out and then throw like an amp or a sub in here. So just some different things you can do with this space. Now, before we leave the back end of this car and the trunk space, I want to do a comparison so you understand how this car stacks up to some of the other vehicles out there in the market. So I'm going to throw that up on the screen so you can see, hey, where does this live out there in the market as far as comparing to other makes and models? After you've taken a look at that, we're going to head into the second row, talk about leg space and kind of what's back there. So here we are in the back seat of this car. And the first thing I want to point out is, of course, they always do cool things with the interior. It's just a classic black, but it's got the red kind of stitching to it. And when we hop into the front, it's really cool looking. But when I talk to you about leg space back here, right? So as I flip it around, I'll point out that I push the seat all the way back and I'm barely touching. I'm 6 foot 250, so I'm a bigger guy, right? So you've got 37.4 inches of leg space back here. So pretty good as far as what you've got to work with. I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how the second row leg space compares to other vehicles out there in the market. So I want you to take a look at that. After you've taken a look at that, we'll just kind of point out a couple things that you'll see back here, which are, of course, that threading that I was talking about that's the black on red. Of course, I do have a flip down here, right, with cup holders, so easy enough to understand and use. As we come across the dash, where you would normally see like a faux wood finish, they've just filled it in with black here. I've got cloth right here and then kind of a graphite finish as far as right here. I do have a Bose stereo system with, I believe, 12 speakers. So you're gonna find speakers here and then tweeters there as well. I've got a back pocket, and then in true Honda fashion, you're not gonna get that second pocket. Doesn't matter how much you spend or what you dream about. So now that we've looked at the second row, let's hop into the front row. We'll talk about some leg space and go over the materials and then everything in the dash. Here we are in the front row of the car. One of the very first things you're gonna notice, the seats, right? They've got this like red print with the SI stitching in it. It's super cool. I love it. I always like it. I just like that they theme this car. When I flip this around, I'll show you how they've done it with the dash too, which is really cool. But the first thing I want to talk about is leg space in this car. So I have the seat pushed, not even all the way back, but now I got it all the way back. You got 42.3 inches of leg space here. So at this point, I'm 6 foot and I could barely get the clutch all the way down. So you have got a lot of space. I can actually slide it forward and still be good. So know that you've got a lot of space going on from that aspect, right? I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how this car, of course, stacks up to other vehicles out there in the market. Because if you're looking at this car, you want to know, hey, is this going to be good leg space for me? How does it stack up? Or a lot of the other cars out there really small. So I want you to see what that looks like. Now that you've taken a look at that, let's talk about the materials and what you've got going on up here, right? So the first thing, of course, the seats. I want to kind of bring you in here. You've got that same red stitching that you do in the back. You've got the SI and then this like red-black checker finish that runs down. As you come across the side, you can see that red stitching again, and they've done that same paneling here. They've changed out here, so now you've got like a gloss black versus just the flat black back there. Kind of weird. I wish they would have kept it kind of unison. And then you've got that same graphite finish. As you come across the dash, I'll point out, you can see they've done that red trim as it wraps around. Super cool. And then you've got the graphite finish that runs here. And then of course the red stitching with the leather steering wheel as you come across to the other side, right? So they've got a good theme going here. I just wish it would have carried from front to back, right? Keep the red, add it to the back as well, just so you can make the car continue to look sporty everywhere, regardless if it's a four-door or not. Let's talk about some of the different features and things that you're gonna find on the dash and the buttons, right? So down underneath, of course, you've got your hood release right here. On the door, you're going to find your trunk release right there. And then underneath, you're going to find vehicle stability assist, which works with traction control to correct in the event that you go into a skid. Above that, this is going to be related to that Honda sensing that I talked about at the front of the car. So if I press this button, it's going to pull up those different features that we kind of went over. So the first being road departure mitigation. If I drive off the shoulder of the road, it'll give me an audible alert and shake the wheel. If I scroll down one, this is my blind spot information system. So if you didn't know, you do have blind spot monitoring in the car. So this will light up orange if there's somebody in my blind spot. And if I start to get over it, it'll give me an audible alert. I'll continue to scroll down that collision mitigation braking. So if it's looking like I'm going to rear end another car, it'll give me an audible alert flash in the dash and then actually apply the brakes to help prevent the accident. So all three of these features are right here. You can turn them on and off as you will, right? Easy enough to understand. Now, while we're talking about Honda sensing, I'll just jump over to the other two just so we can kind of be on that. Those are going to live on the other side of the steering wheel, right? So they're going to be right here. Now, the two buttons that we're going to be talking about mainly is going to be right here. This is going to be my lane keep assist. When I press this, it's going to use that camera up there that I mentioned to detect those lines on the road. So if I drift to the left or the right, it can keep me centered. And you'll know that it's on because you'll see this indicator turn on right there. Got to be going over 45 for this feature to work, but then it'll light up and you'll be able to go as you will, right? The next one is going to be related to my speed controls, right? So as far as using cruise control, when I get up to my speed, of course I would set that, and then I want to use this secondary button right here. This button, when you see boxes right here, the more boxes it has, the more space it's going to keep between me and the car in front of me. So less boxes, less space, right? And what that means is it's just bouncing radar off the car in front of it, so that if it sees that car, it'll slow me down, and then when I get out from behind them, it'll take me back up to the speed that I've set as far as my cruise control, right? So that's kind of the Honda sensing setup here. Right now, of course, my air controls, it's kind of cool what they've done here. They've given you a little tab that you can move around. They'll move your air, and then of course you can turn it on and off. My dimmer switch for my lights and everything right here, which has a little cool LED. Kind of cool that they've done that, right? Lives right there. Now on the steering wheel, let's go over some general controls. We already talked about the right side over here. The left side, you've got a home button right here. Your home button is going to pull up and then allow you to access all those different menus that are there. So I'm actually going to back out of this screen real quick here so that we can get back to this. So I've got a compass with my tack right there. Once I've hit this, it's going to give me all these different options. So I'm not going to walk you through every single one of them, but I want you to know that you have quite a bit living here, right? So range and fuel, speed and time, these are all going to be just general functions. Audio, you know what that is. It'll show you whatever you're listening to. Easy enough to understand when I'm working through that. As far as my phone, you know, if I'm receiving a call, text, anything like that. My turbo gauge, it'll let you know when it's engaged and what you're at. As I continue down navigation, if I have up and running, it'll give me that turn-by-turn direction right there. Driver attention monitor just means that if you're using all these different safety settings, at a point, it can start to alert you to be like, hey, just making sure you're kind of still alert and paying attention. Throttle and braking system, this is going to be something unique that you'll find to the SI. So know that this, along with your G meter, are also going to be, you know, some additional features that you're getting out of the SI since it's a performance-based vehicle to let you kind of watch this a little bit more. And then your stopwatch, right? So if you're timing yourself, kind of cool that they offer that, right? So that way you can check your times. If you're really trying to get performance-based out of this, maybe you're racing it, maybe you're dragging it, you know, whatever you're doing with it. Your seatbelt monitor, this just lets you know who's wearing a seatbelt and who isn't. Right now, you can see the red X, meaning that I am not wearing a seatbelt. But if I had other ones in the, you know, in the family in here, I can make sure that they're being safe. My maintenance, oil life, things like that. And then safety support, we already went over what that is. It's just a different place to access all these different safety settings that we've already gone over, right? So a lot of info that you can get to right here. Your voice command button right here, you can use this for Bluetooth, or if you can press and hold, you can use it for Apple CarPlay or for Android Auto, right? So if you want to ask Siri to do something or Google, know that you can there. And then on the right side, those two safety settings that we went over as far as your cruise control and your lane keep assist. Now, back behind here, you've got your auto on-off headlights. And then of course, you've got your windshield wipers as well. As we move across the dash, you've got your AC controls, more vents, and then your 9-inch touchscreen that's living over here that we'll go over completely here in just a second. I've got 2 USBs, a power outlet right here. My drive modes. Drive modes is actually really cool here. So they've done something different. I've got 3 different drive modes. I've got a sport mode, right, which revs at a higher RPM, gives me a little bit more get up and go. And of course, these indicators come on when I hit it, right? The individual one's actually really cool. So individual will show over here, and then I can customize this. So I can go into customization and change the engine to either sport or normal, and then I can change the steering to sport or normal. So if I want to kind of find that in-between feature that works best for me, I can absolutely do that, right? And then my last one I have is just a normal drive mode, right? So anytime you select these, it changes the screen too. So you can see that sport mode versus that normal, and then I can jump into that customizable one, which it continues to ask me that same question. I could just eliminate that, right? So cool that they give you these 3 drive modes, and one's actually customizable. This is your auto on-off button, so you can turn this off, but every time I crank up the car, I'm gonna have to press this if I don't want this to turn the engine off when I come to like a stoplight. My electronic parking brake, so to use it, you just put your foot on the brake, press down to release, lift up. So you don't have like a hand brake that you can drift with, be aware of that. Then my brake hold, if I'm in stop and go traffic, what this is designed to do is if I can move up 5 feet, right? And then, well, let me show you. I gotta put my seatbelt on, so be aware of that. You gotta be wearing your seatbelt to use this function. But how it works, right? So I put the car in drive. Let me move my seat up since I moved it back here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the brake hold button on. When I do that, you'll see brake hold and hold right there. What this means is that it's holding the brake right now. So I don't have to use my foot on the brake, right? I can leave it off and I'm not gonna drift. This is really cool because it's a manual transmission. When I wanna move forward, I'll press the gas and it'll release that hold, and then I'll move forward. Now, when I come to a complete stop again, I press hold, it'll actually hold the brake, so now I can release my foot and I won't drift again. So that's what this function is. So a reminder, this is a 6-speed manual transmission, so no secret there, that's how SIs come. Of course, it's presented to you right there. 2 cup holders and then some additional storage that lives here in the back. So now that we've kind of gone over the dash and some of these different displays, let's talk about that touchscreen. So here we are on the 9-inch touchscreen that lives in this vehicle, and I want to walk you through a few things and then talk to you about Apple CarPlay and Android Auto and kind of how you can manipulate this, right? So of course, the first thing you'll see here is just the general home screen, which you can press this button to get to. Of course, I've got all my apps, right? So this is just going to be general, some things that I can turn on and off if I don't want them to display. Easy enough to play with there. My phone, as far as accessing Bluetooth, I can connect up via wirelessly and then be able to access that. FM, FM, AM, all those things, pretty normal, right? So easy enough to play through here and take advantage of. I don't even know if anybody listens to radio anymore, but if you do, you got it available to you. Bluetooth audio if you want to stream through any kind of, particular, device, I should say, phone, anything like that. My trip computer, so accessing, current, previous trips, trip A, trip B, all of those different things lives right here. Easy enough to access. Sirius XM, you get 90 days of that you can take advantage of, and then once after that, you would need to update and start your own subscription. USBs, I've got 2 USBs that I pointed down below the touchscreen in the dash earlier, so you know that you could take advantage of those. As far as if you have a drive that you have a bunch of music on, you could absolutely do that, or if you want to plug something in to play music through. My general settings right here, so this is going to be just accessing general stuff, accessing like Bluetooth. If I want to get to a smartphone connection, connecting up Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, I will remind you that this is wireless inside of this vehicle, so kind of nice. If you just want to go to like Bluetooth connections or Wi-Fi, if you want to connect up to like a hotspot, you absolutely can do that right there. So very easy to understand as far as what you're working through. Vehicle settings, so this is where you're going to get to like door and window setups, TPS, meter setups. If you want to turn on your tripometer, turn that on and off. Keyless access, if I touch the door handles, do I want it to unlock just the driver's door or all of the doors? So pretty easy to walk through all of these different functions. They've actually cleaned this up over the last few years and made it pretty easy to use. As we continue over here across AM, we don't need to talk about that. System updates, it updates over Wi-Fi, clock, wallpaper. Boom, you can pull this up, you can customize it, you can make it analog, digital, and of course change that image out if you want to. All you got to do is go to the settings button, and then you can play with that stuff right here. So very easy to understand. As far as more, Honda Link, if you aren't familiar with Honda Link's set up to where, one, everybody gets a free feature. And what that feature is in the event that I get in an accident, if the car is connected up to Bluetooth and I hit enable when I connect it up, it can call 911 and give them the information to the car. So this is assuming that 1, the airbags are deployed, and 2, you're not responding when they call you, right? So they can say, hey, here's the year, make, model, and last known location of the vehicle to try to help keep you safe. Now, the car, of course, has a compass, which actually, let me come back to Honda Link. I will remind you that depending on the trim level of car, so if you got like a touring version of this car versus a base model versus an SI, they offer some additional features. So if you wanted to be able to like start the car from your phone or control the door locks, there are some subscription-based stuff that they do offer, and some of them they offer trials. So you can go to HondaLink.com if you want to learn more about that. The car does offer a compass, which you'll see right there, and I can actually pull up over in the driver's side, dash, which which I did earlier. And then as we continue across here, smart connection, this will actually start to pick up on what you use a lot, and it can create a button for you that'll be like a quick jump, right? So kind of a cool feature that they offer that just appeared over the last year or so. And then my display mode, that's just my dimmer, right? So easy enough to understand. Now, I am using a Pixel here. I've got a Pixel 5, so I'm gonna be using Android Auto when I jump in. It is wireless, I'll remind you that, so phone's not connected up. I just connected it, and then I can move forward. Of course, you have access to all the normal features in here. Google Maps, Waze, Apple Maps, depending on what you're using, right? Spotify, Pandora, any of those apps that you wanna download, there's plenty of them. TomTom, Waze, just depending on if you want GPS, you want music, you want weather. I can even access some of the things, Messenger, my Teams, for my other job, different things like that. Very easy to access under here. Now, my number one complaint when I jump into some of these features is that they limit what I can do, right? It pulls up and it'll immediately start playing, but if I want to run a search, I have to use the voice command button, right? I can't just type in a search, and when I do run a search, right, let me back out of that since it's copying what I'm saying, it just immediately plays that. It doesn't let me like scroll through an artist and look at all the different features and functions that you have available to you, right? So kind of a pain in the butt that they limit what you can do there. The same thing that you'll run into if you're using like Google Maps, right? If I'm driving down the road and I want to use Google Maps, one, I'm gonna have to hit here and then I'm gonna have to run a search, right? If I'm parked, I can type in a search, but anything else, I'm gonna have to run that search via, voice command. So it makes it kind of a pain in the butt and limits what you could do. And then outside of that, all the different features and functions that I don't have access to. Things like YouTube, not Pandora. Things like, YouTube, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Kodi, whatever I may want to use on here, I don't have access to. So that's why I want to talk to you about something I just reviewed and something you can take advantage of, which is this AI car box. These guys sent me out this. I actually have them send me out the light version as well, so I'm gonna do a review on that. But what this is gonna allow you to do is way different than this, so let me show you real quick. All right, guys, so here we are back on the same screen, but you'll notice things look a whole lot different, and that is because I'm using the One Car Stereo AI box. So I just wanna show you some cool things that this does, and in case you're interested, I've made a video on it. So under Spotify here, the first thing I'll show you is it looks like classic Spotify, right? I can run a search, I can type in a name. When I hit that name, I can either search it by voice command or not. Let's say I went Kygo. When it pulls up, it's gonna give you all those different access points, right, of songs that you've already liked, their most popular songs, and then their discography, popular releases, all of that info. So it unlocks the full potential of this, right? So that's one reason I really like using this. The other one is, of course, exactly what you'd think. What if I want to be able to watch something on Netflix, right? What if I wanted to be able to watch this, right? I can hit play, I can download it, all these different things that I can do. So if I'm taking a long road trip, one, be safe, don't be an idiot, use this sparingly, right? Pay attention to what you're doing. But how cool is it that I could watch something as I go, right? So I'm gonna jump back out of this for a second here and show you even one cooler thing that it can do, right? So let's say I wanna pull up my maps, right? So I go to my Google Maps here, and let's say that's what I'm gonna be running. So I've got Google Maps running, and then I wanna jump over and do a split screen, and then I'm gonna throw on Netflix with it, right? So boom, now I've got Netflix and both these running, right? So now I can have my directions going to wherever I'm going, and I can have this going on the other side, so that if I am taking a long road trip, one, I could keep at track with my turn-by-turn directions, and then two, I could enjoy or listen to, at the very least, a show while I'm driving down the road. So a very cool thing that this does here. As you can see, both are running congruently of each other. This is the AI box. This is the larger box. I'm gonna be doing my next video over their AI Light box. If you're interested in knowing more about this, I will put a link down in the description as far as, you can get to it, of course. I have a code that you can, of course, buy it. I'm one of their affiliates, so I can save you some money off a purchase of the major box, this big one, or if you want to go to that light box, which, like I said, there's already a video up of this, which I'll throw a link up there so you can check it out. And then if you want to learn about the light box, it's a little bit cheaper. I'll be making that video here coming up next. So just wanted to point this out while we're talking about Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. All right, guys, so I think we've done it. We've pretty much walked you through the outside and the inside of every feature that this car has to offer. I do want to revisit all of those different comparisons that we went over. So I'm gonna start you at the front of the car and talk about the car? Yeah, let's talk about the car. And talk to you about horsepower, right? So you're looking at 200 horsepower. In the previous versions of this car, you had 205, but it revved at a little bit different RPM, right? So just be aware that there are some changes generally there, right? So you're looking at 200 horsepower in this car. If you drop down to like a Touring or an EX, any of those other 1.5 liters, you're looking at 180 horsepower. And if you went down to the base model, which if you're looking at this, I doubt you'll even consider it, you'd be at 158 horsepower. Now on the other end of that spectrum, if you wanted to jump up to the Type R, an extra 106 horsepower puts you in at 306, but it's gonna cost you about 10 grand to do it. So just be aware as far as where this car lives. Now, with that said, now you understand where it lives in the world of Civics, I want to throw up a comparison so you can see how this car stacks up to other vehicles out there in the market, right? So different makes, different models, that sort of thing. So take a look at that on the screen. Now, after we've talked about that, I want to talk to you about miles per gallon. This car gets 27 in the city and 37 on the highway. Now, if you were dropping down into some of those classic Civics, you're going to pick up some gas mileage, right? You're going to get, about 5 miles per gallon better. So I'm going to throw up some different trim levels and kind of what the gas mileage is as far as the world of Civics, right? So you can understand how this car stacks up if gas mileage is important. However, if you're looking at this performance-based car, I'm going to assume that you're going to give up a little bit of that because you want to have some fun, right? Now, out there past Civics, I want to talk to you about different makes and models. So I'm going to throw up a different comparison so you see how this car stacks up to what's out there in the world, right? I want to understand how this car stacks up to other makes, other models. So take a look at that on the screen so you can understand where does this car ultimately live out there in different real-world comparisons. Now that we've talked about that, let's talk about the front row, right? One, it's awesome. Got some cool stitching. Got a lot of cool things in here. A very cool themed finish to the front. But I want to talk about leg space. You've got 42.3 inches of leg space in the front row of this vehicle. So I want to throw up a comparison so you see how this car stacks up to other vehicles out there in the market. In the world of Civics, this is, I want to say the exact same. Doesn't matter which Civic you pick. So I want to see what else is out there in the market so you can understand that. Now, after that, I want to talk to you about the second row. This car, I want to say, had 37.4 cubic inches of leg space in the back. So pretty good, right? I had the seat pushed almost all the way back and I could sit behind myself and I still could sit there comfortably, right? So we could take a long road trip and I'd be fine. Now, if there was 3 in the back, that's nonsense. I don't know why you'd ever do that anyway, unless you're taking a short trip. But I want you to see how this car stacks up to other vehicles out there in the market. So I'm gonna throw that comparison to our second row leg space up so you can see it. Now, lastly, I'm gonna move to the trunk. In the trunk, you had 14.7 cubic feet of space. So I want you to understand how this car stacks up to other vehicles out there in the market. I want to say in the world of Civics, that's relatively comparable. They're all about the same. So I'm not going to throw up a bunch of comparisons of Civics, but I do want you to understand how a Honda Civic compares to other vehicles out there in the market, right? So that's pretty much every comparison that we went over in the car. Outside of the touchscreen, you saw how the 9-inch touchscreen works. We talked about the trim levels as far as dropping down to a touring. Hey, if I want to drop down, what do I gain, what do I lose? If not, you can back this up. I've got the different chapters down there and you can go back over that again. The last thing I want to talk to you, of course, is about this box. I am an affiliate, so there's a little bias there, but I do think it does really cool things. If you want to be able to stream inside of your car, this is really cool. If you want to be able to run that split screen, this is very cool. This is portable too, because a lot of guys will do the Honda hack and then it's in the system, but it's not portable, right? I can't pull this out and go, hey man, we're gonna take a road trip or hopping in my buddy's Pilot or an SUV. I can pull this out and plug it into his car. If he's got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, boom, now we can do the same thing in that car. Or if I sell my car, I can take this and move it to my next car. So there are a lot of things I really like about this. I've made a review on it. Of course, you can check out the video. I'll throw that at the end of the screen. And then I will be making a review on the light version, which is about half the price of this one, right? So just know that that's gonna be coming out as well. Other than that, I wanna ask you a couple favors. One, I'll press the like button because one, you like me, and two, you like the way I reviewed this, and hopefully you like the car. If nothing else, just like Hondas and hit the like button. The second one is I hope you leave a comment. If you have questions, comments, concerns about this box, the car itself, anything in particular, I hope that you leave a comment out there so that I can answer it, or one of the 28,000 people that follow the channel can help answer too, because there's sometimes guys out there that know more than I do, I promise you. Outside of that, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel so when I do come out with cool videos, much like this or this vehicle right here, you can check them out, right? Outside of that, I hope that you'll, share the video, right? If you're in a forum, if you saw something cool you like, if you like the way I present things, hopefully you'll put it out there in the world so that other people can see what I'm doing, because it makes me feel good inside. Other than that, like, comment, share, subscribe, all of the things. Later, guys!